I'm Abha Narayan Lamba, and I think really for me, this is the book, Kala Ghora Celebrating an Art District, it's a very nostalgic moment to begin with. 1995 is when I came to this institution for the first time, and I just was a new import from Delhi. Who Rahul always says, I would say, Abha here on the telephone means if you say that, you're from Delhi, but it's now 2 decades.
On this side.
Abha this side, yes. So being now sort of really, yes, this is really my 20 years, I should get my Mumbaikar citizenship. But this whole story of the Kala Ghora as an institution, as a cultural movement, or whatever you call it, really began around the same month, almost 17 years ago. And we walked down, a group of us, Rahul and I walked down the very imposing corridors of Bombay House, and we had an appointment to meet Mr. Shahrukh Sabawala, the grand old man at Tata's and Son, and who was the descendant of Sir Kawasji Jahangir, the benefactor of Mumbai, who has really was one of the greatest philanthropists, who put his stamp and his money where, you know, on buildings like the building next door, Elphinstone College, Kawasji Jahangir Hall of the university. And Shirin Barucha was this very serious lawyer who was sitting in the office representing the Tatas. And it was a motley crew of people. There was Radhika Sabawala of Marg Publications, and there was Amita of the Max Muller Bhavan. So we were just Mr. Jamshed Kanga, a retired bureaucrat and one of the finest municipal commissioners the city has had. And Rahul came up with this idea that we have a great part of the city which is declining, and it sort of just shuts shop after office hours. So it's busy till about 6 or 7, and then at sundown, this was really a place where you had, you know, drug peddlers hanging around in the arcades, and the Gothic buildings bore a very deserted look, and there was really nothing happening to this part. And as part of the Urban Design Research Institute, we just prepared a very simple mapping of the area, just putting down on a map what were the institutions that were housed in these buildings and what were the existing usages. And just by mapping that, we'd really found that there was over 1 lakh square foot of existing gallery space between the Prince of Wales Museum, the NGMA, various galleries, the Jahangir Art Gallery. And what if we just brought this all together? So this is where the journey began, and it's here today where we have really thousands and thousands of people on a daily basis who come here. So there's really millions of people over the city and across who've been touched by Kala Ghora, who, you know, people you meet outside in cities like Cochin or Chennai say, oh, wait, when is we're going to be here next in Bombay? And they always just imagine that the city is a part of the Kala Ghora Festival, and the Kala Ghora Festival is really an intrinsic part of the city. So this is the book, Kala Ghora, Celebrating Mumbai's Art District. And to start the conversation on this, I would really want to ask Manik why and why did you want a book why did you, the idea of putting together a book, where did it begin and what were the...
The important thing is never who's had the idea. It's always the cooperation which results in its execution. So many things happen as far as Kala Ghora is concerned, the festival is concerned. So who started with the idea is really not that important. But it's always been a huge cooperative effort which has put things together. But what was the purpose of this book? The purpose of this book was simple, that the association was being known only for the wonderful festival that it was conducting. And I thought there was a need to let people know the larger work which was also happening. One of the catalysts for the book was that about a year and a half ago, you know that we were in court for over 9 months, and we were battling a lot of people who had filed a case in court. And one of the allegations in court was that this association is just money making. They're having so many stalls, they're making money, they're not doing anything with that money. So I thought it was necessary to put forth what the association was about. And I think you'll be glad to know that this year itself, we would be spending about 2 crores of rupees from our funds on refurbishment of monuments, dilapidated clock tower at Bazar Gate Street, the Pyao outside Horniman Circle Gardens, the Mulji Jetha. We are putting up a statue of Ardhan Khambata, again, to get the Kala Ghoda back. We have refurbished the garden where we are sitting in DSL. We've given more than 50 lakhs of rupees, around that sum, to the museum, and we continue to fund that. So I think this part was not coming through. And if you see the aims and objects of the association, the first aim and object is the environment. If you don't have the environment, you have nothing. And I think it was a great idea, Rahul, you, and the others. Of course, I have known Shirin since the Oval Corporate Residents Association days when she was fighting for the Oval, and I knew Shahrukh Sabawala because we were together in Citizens Action Group. And I think it was to reinforce that. And I must say the book has turned out well, even if I may say so, because it presents an overall picture of Kala Ghoda. And I also think from the association's point of view, that such a document was very necessary, and it adds to what the association has been doing for all these years. We had the Chief Minister this evening, and he was also, he was extremely positive about what Kala Ghoda has done. And as I said, it is the support and cooperation of, thousands of people. It's the leadership of people, like Brinda, who spend so much time on the programming of the festival, which is so important to, and if you have 450, 500 programs happening, and today I said, okay, we have, we also have our little slogan, which is Sabka Sahas or Sabka Swagat, with the cooperation of all and welcome to all. So we have all these wonderful things which is open to everyone, right? It's amazing. For free. And we had today eclectic presentations, like first the Symphony Orchestra of India, which was Western classical music, and second Ustad Amjad Ali Khan and his sons. And I can tell you that we had, for both, we had the same thousands of people who saw it. So it's absolutely a wonderful feeling.
Okay, my question to you, Rahul, is when this whole idea was sort of really at the nascent stage, had you at any point really thought that we would be here with the Kala Ghoda Festival and the Kala Ghoda Association would be here? And what really, when you'd envisioned this nearly 2 decades ago, what was really the impetus of it, and what had you visualized?
Yeah. That's thanks for that. And I was just saying to Brinda, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about a little bit. But I want to sort of just pick up for continuity of the conversation what Manik said, because I think he set the ground in a wonderful way. And I think one way of kind of thinking and talking and recapping and looking at the future about a condition like this is to break it into 2 parts. So one is, what are the bigger ideas? What are the missions that we might establish? And then, of course, there are the smaller, very and most interesting and most important stories of the people who make it happen. The corporation, as Manik rightly put it. Yeah. So I'm going to just back up for a second. Some of this is in the book, but I think it's interesting for the audience, I think, and hope to sort of begin to, understand how. So, in 1995, is that Amita Desai? Yes, that is. So she's one of the original sort of folks here. And then she just mentioned your name, Amita. Great to see you. So, in 1995, there was a milestone for Mumbai and Mumbai's heritage, which was the heritage regulations that became law, in a sense. Now, that is something, again, as Manik was, pointed out, the question of cooperation. It is just that in 95, something's aligned that we as a community, as civil society, could convince the government to have a legislation. But for 10, 15 years before that, citizens had been listing buildings. There was the Indian Heritage Society. There were multiple lists. But I think really when the conversation shifted to urban conservation, suddenly the legislation became possible, because it's only when you talk about areas that you can talk about bylaws and laws, not on individual buildings. So I think that was the big shift. Now, in 95, when that happened, we were all, of course, thrilled, and we were celebrating and stuff. By about 97 or 98, at least to a group of us, especially in the UDRI and things, it became evident, and we started asking ourselves the question, what is the point of this legislation if on the ground you don't see change, if buildings actually don't get conserved? It's abstract. And so that became really the central intellectual question that we began to worry about. And, there were citizens' movements at that time, and who were organizing themselves for improving zones, like Shirin and her group for Oval, etc. And we were just all asking ourselves, what is a contemporary engine, so to speak, that would begin to make transformation happen on the ground? And it was at that point that we began to do the mapping that Abha was talking about. And we began to, as somebody later said, this wasn't a conscious thing. They said the only way that you could get people together is if these sub-areas within the fort area had their own personality. And so what does that mean? And how do you create? So the art district as an idea here, the Kala Ghoda, it wasn't a historic thing. It was a construction in some ways to give a personality to a zone based on common interests so that people could band together. And so the area was broken into many such zones as part of this exercise, including the banking zone, which was Horniman Circle, where then Shireen spearheaded the Horniman Circle sort of project within that imagination, the tourist district, which for various political reasons not much happened, and love to talk about it at some point, etc. So this began to happen. And by 97, 98, we were all beginning to get clear about this and beginning to create an association of people. Vivek Ajgaonkar here, because the Sassoon, the museum, there were many other people who, like the Max Muller Bhavan, the institutions, we all began to start to getting together. And it was, of course, the discovery that there's 1 lakh square feet or something of gallery space. But what was very interesting is when we came up just with the idea in brainstorming about doing a festival as a way to position the area, we went around, went to the Max Muller Bhavan, went to the Artist Center, went to Jahangir Art Gallery, went to the museum, and just got a list of what was happening that week in these places. And by just putting what was happening, we didn't add any events. We saw that we have a festival if we positioned it like that. We didn't have to add anything. And so finally, what in the first festival in 99, what we added was was Hussain, who painted the Kala Ghoda, and he did a live demonstration in the parking lot where he put up a big canvas and he painted his memory of the Kala Ghoda, which was sold in an auction to raise some money. And there was, I think, a Zakir Hussain or a concert in the parking lot to make it feel how you could use public space. So those are the only 2 additions. The rest was just because it was on a poster, people perceived it differently. And at that moment, Sharda Dwivedi and myself, I think 2 weeks before the festival, we we did a story in the Times of India, half a page, which said, Kala Ghoda post to become art district, and we kind of speculated what it meant. Now, the perceptual change there, just by people perceiving it like that, was half the work done. And I think that is really the broader conceptual idea. And I think, as Manik was saying, that, you can extend that more as an intellectual idea into seeing it as cultural infrastructure for the whole city, in a sense, because you have an accumulation of institutions who want to support art. So that is the broader frame within which this went. And, one keeps, and I keep harping when I see Brinda and others, just keep reminding ourselves about this, because finally that should really be the big ambition. And we can talk about what the implications of that are as we... And then there are the smaller stories of people getting together and, banding, the groups that you were describing. And then, the story of how Manik Manik comes on board at some point where the festival was supposed to go to another level, and it was only someone like Manik Dawar and I could approach him because I've known him from his Elphinstone College days, and I know his Rosie Pass better than anyone else, that I could go and ask him for favors and things like that. So that's what, I mean, the combination of this is what makes anything successful.
And the first festival was really like a cottage industry. I mean, I remember Amita and I sat together with little sketches and we made a little calendar of events and we did it on A4 paper. There was not even proper laser scanning or anything at that time. It was like cut paste papers and going to Apsara Xerox and taking Xeroxes. I remember Rahul and Sharda sitting down and writing the text of every building because we wanted to put a historic plaque there. There were all sorts of people who would come across and sit at Wayside Inn with its red and white check tablecloths, a great legend, by the way, which is gone, and now with Rhythm House going, there's so much loss as well of such institutions. But it was amazing how different people bandied together from different strata, from different fields of interest, and just these endless cups of tea at Samovar or Wayside Inn to just discuss what we do together. And there was a certain energy that was really infectious, which got this going. And that brings me to Brinda. When you start looking at this festival that has grown over the years and curating the visual content, what, the kind of, it's almost, the festival has become so big since it began, which was really very low-key and very small. And we had one Lumiere Brothers film that was shown to commemorate the first screening at Watson's Hotel. But these were really, it really started as a small thing. And I remember for the initial meetings when you just got involved, you've always been very quiet, but you would just, just sort of taking it all in. And I think eventually to take on this and sort of take it to this massive scale, how has your journey been?
Actually, Abha, when you said that it was a cottage industry, let me tell you, it still is a cottage industry. It's a very, very big cottage industry, that's all. We still make the posters ourselves sometimes. We still do some drawings, and we still do cutting and pasting and chopping and all that physical kind of work. And we sit in our office and do all those things. Of course, the team has now become much bigger. And I have to say that quite often, I don't think we have thanked them enough. There are so many people who just come and volunteer. The same way that I used to volunteer in those days and come and sit quietly. We have many like that now. But of course, I think you just have to be very passionate about it. There's no other reason why I would still be here, I think. Because I think a couple of days before the festival, I'm sure, I don't know what Manik thinks, but I always feel, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It's so stressful, it's so large, it's so, so difficult, it's so unwieldy, and, tempers are flying, and everybody is stressed out, and, everyone is talking about how they've kind of stayed up all night, and also there are artists who are very difficult. There are also speakers. There are so many musicians. There are dancers we are dealing with. We are dealing with people who come and stay and they don't like the hotel. They don't like the food. They don't like the packed lunches. There are all kinds of petty problems and difficulties. But I think at the end of the day, when we walk on the street, at least when I do, and people come up to me and, they actually shake my hand and say, thank you so much. We know what good work you're doing. I think that's what makes us, want us. I think that's what makes me, at least, want to keep on and on and on. And it's a big high at the end of the festival that, oh my God, did we do this? Did we really do this big thing? Last year we had about almost 600 programs, and my husband keeps asking, did you count the programs this time? And I haven't had the chance, I haven't had the time. And I don't know if you have, Manik, did you? Because you said that on the stage. You said 450, so I was wondering.
Sandy, with the ideas that you see.
Sure. No, but what to me is amazing about the Kala Ghoda festival is really two things. One is that in a country where we've been so monument-centric as a nation, I mean, from the establishment of the Archaeological Survey of India in 1861, we've perceived heritage as monument. And that is the reason why a city like Mumbai has no central government protected monument on the island city, which is shocking because none of the Victorian buildings and the amazing colonial architecture of Bombay was considered important enough, significant enough to be even meriting national protection. But what Bombay did as a result was really break the mold and stop looking at buildings and monuments in isolation. And I think that was the greatest victory of the 1995 heritage regulations, that they actually created a new language for Indian conservation, because they brought it into the realm of urban conservation and said, no, it's not just this 700-year-old building that is important. What is important are neighborhoods, and what are important are open spaces, and what are important are precincts. And therefore, in 95, what Bombay did with the heritage regulations was really heroic, because you have a city that is considered to be too young and too colonial and with not a deep enough past come out and boldly say that even though we have the highest real estate in the country, in Asia, in perhaps one of the cities with the greatest real estate values in the world, we feel that it's as important to take a whole neighborhood or a district like the Fort District or Marine Drive and say that this is worthy of preservation, to take a space like Oval Maidan and open sites and spaces as streetscapes are equally important. And I think that is one of the greatest victories of Mumbai's urban conservation. And even now, 2 decades after that, there are cities like Chennai and Kolkata who are still grappling with heritage regulations. There are states like Rajasthan which have so much heritage that don't have an enabling act like a Town and Regional Country Planning Act to begin with, to even enable a regulation like that. So in that context of this monument-centric approach, what is great about the Kala Ghoda is that it uses everything from these leftover spaces like the garden that we're in to pavements to arcades for a very important urban festival. And Shirin, I wanted to ask you, because you've really been our city's champion of open spaces. In this context of a kind of a governance system that doesn't even consider colonial heritage is worth preserving, and is so monument-centric, to be able to fight for, firstly, a historic open space like Oval Maidan, and then to, zealously guard historic open spaces like Horniman Circle and Kala Ghoda. How has your journey been in these last decade and a half?
It's been difficult to say. It's been, to say the least, and to put it very, very mildly, difficult. Very, very, very difficult. To start with, in a city, if 3 different authorities are there which own the open spaces, just say in this area, there's the state government which owns the Oval Maidan, there's the, and don't tread on my toes, it's Horniman Circle and the MCGM who owns the Horniman Circle, and the collector owns the Cross Maidan. Let me ask why. Aren't they the same sort of open spaces for recreation, which is for the citizen? Why are there 3 authorities with 3 different sets of regulations, 3 different parameters, 3 different usages? When we protest about this, it's all historical. You cannot question it. But you have to deal with all these 3 authorities, and it's quite a monumental task, and you have to keep at it. And as I said to my friends and companions along the way who fought along with me for these open spaces, for the people, that if we give up, they win. And this I could not countenance. Yes, you can take it back. Yes, you can do whatever you want. It is your property. But I'll give it a damn good fight before you do that. Because look at the Oval Maidan for one. It's 22 acres of open space, so needed in the city. This afternoon, I was looking at it as I passed by. I think there must have been at least 8,000 or 9,000 people there at one time. They're all playing cricket. I don't know how they find their ball or their wickets or their boundary lines or whatever it is, but they enjoy themselves. See the need, see the terrible need for open spaces. And it was going to the dogs. There was no fence, there was no walking track, there was no watering system. Mind you, there was a guardian from the government who was paid to look after this Maidan. Heaven knows what he did, moonlit, I suppose, all throughout the time. And it was only when we insisted that, look, you keep it as the recreation ground, you have designated it, or you allow us to do it. They said, you have no money, you will run away with it, you will build your house on it, you will do this, you will do that. I said, no, we are not. I have a house right opposite it. I have no need for building one down there. So it took us a battle which had to be consistent, which had to be constant. For 15 years we battled them till they said, out of, I think, exhaustion from these women who kept on at them, who kept on nagging them, that all right, we'll give it to you for 6 months as a trial. If you don't succeed in showing us some change, we take it back. And that was 1997. And Rahul did up the ground for us, for free, I might say. And the contractors gave us everything at cost price. And ever since then, we have maintained it. And not a cent has come from the state government, which owns that land. But I must say to their credit that they don't interfere with our maintaining it, and we have the security, we have the gardeners, we have the walking track, we have the watering system, the lighting, everything is to our account. Similarly, it was with Horniman Circle, where we maintained the ground as a public charitable trust for over 30 years. And because many people who were given these grounds by the municipality now for adoption misused their license and started building little clubhouses and excluding you, and you can't come in, and close the doors now, and it became their private fiefdom, their private club to enjoy themselves with. They have shut us all down. One fine morning they have taken it away just now.
Talking about permissions, Manik, how many permissions do you need when you start the Kala Ghoda festival? Just give us a run through,
when
please.
Brinda was saying that every year before she starts the festival, she tells herself, is this really worth it? And then after that, of course, it's always worth it. And this is the first time that I can remember in the last 6-7 years that I have not had to ring up the municipal commissioner. I have not had to go to the police commissioner. I have not had to spend 9 months in court. And also not just me, our administrative people who go through hell. Shirin deals with 3 authorities over a period of time. When we do a 9-day festival, we deal with 3 police stations. Kolaba police station is one side of Rampart Row, MRA Marg is this side, and Horniman Circle, and Azad Maidan is across Maidan, for Azad Maidan police station. Another thing which I must also commend our people is that, I don't know, the permissions, just as I have not counted the programs, I don't count the number of permissions because they may result in lack of sleep. But I must say one thing, that we've not given 1 naya paisa to anyone to secure these permissions. And no matter what it has taken, right, we've just curtailed, I mean, there's not a single naya paisa we have given. And that is because also the way the festival has developed. And one thing I must also tell you is that at the top, we have all the support. It's at the bottom that people somehow don't understand, the importance of the festival. So finally, when we don't get what we have to, then we have to go to the top. But I tell you, I think it's now going to be a thing of the past. Especially this year, as we have been invited to be part of the Make in India Week. And that also is a feather in our cap. And of course, we said we can't extend the festival at Rampart Row. It would cause too much problem. So we are now extending it for 3 days at the Cross Maidan. And I now don't foresee any problems. But just as a little thing, there are 2 people out here who I would like to acknowledge. One, of course, is Dhanush Joseph, who's sitting at the back from the 70s, who have been our partners, our infrastructure partners for about the last 7-8 years. So Tanush there, and the other person I would like to acknowledge, I have a colleague of mine, Swati, who's designed the book. So Swati, if you
A
can
big
also
thank you
stand
to Swati, because till the nth hour we've made her do changes, and I know Swati spent nearly all night once working on the layout.
I can
so
tell you,
thank you.
that's about the first time anybody from my office worked on a Sunday. But but ultimately, Rahul was saying about my rosy past in Elphinstone College, and that was the reason I was I became part of the association. I once met a few professors in college and who were talking to me, and I told them I was a terrible student. I never attended class. And one of them said, terrible students make good alumni. So I made a small token donation to the restoration, and Shahrukh Sabawala was kind enough to say, why don't you join the association? So I joined the association, and like everything I do it with a little bit of passion. So maybe sometimes I may be a little brusque, I may be wanting to get my way, but I guess it is there now for all to see. It's just, I'm sure Brinda shares this with me. I'm sure that all of us who work on the festival share this with me, that it's just a great feeling to see so many people from all walks of life just enjoy, especially the children. I mean, the children are also very close to me, and the way we have children's literature, we have children's films, and we have the whole children's section, and the way all this develops. And whether you believe it or not, just as human beings have a destiny, so do associations and organizations. And I think Kala Ghoda Association has great destiny, and it's because of the people who have, people like you who've been the ones to start it.
Well, Manik mentioned Elphinstone College. I think in the history of conservation, it's one of those crazy ideas where an association that had just been born, had no money in the bank, decided that they'll take up the biggest building around in the neighborhood and restore that. And I remember from the first festival, we managed to raise a princely sum of 5 lakh rupees through HSBC. And with that 5 lakhs, we went boldly to the Dorab Tata Trust to ask for a matching grant, and we got 10 lakhs. And with 10 lakhs, we decided to restore the facade of Elphinstone College. You can spend 10 lakhs even in those days on a good bathroom interior, which Rahul could for many, many of his rich clients. But we all decided that, yes, Elphinstone College it is. And then we went to the Maharashtra government saying that since you have done nothing to improve the condition of this college, we're setting up a meeting with the alumni that included people like Subur Munji and Manik and other Elphinstonians, Saryu Doshi, and got an MOU between the Kala Ghoda Association and the government of Maharashtra to say that for the first time, a new association of just citizens would be empowered not only to tender for the project, but award tenders, supervise contractors, and restore the facade. And this was with that 10 lakh amount that was raised, we all pitched in, and everybody just pulled in all their resources, and we were able to restore the facade of Elphinstone in 2002. So it's 14 years now, and now one can see the Public Works Department putting up a scaffold, and I think some work is currently happening. So when we talk about journeys like this, Rahul, you've had benefit of two things. One is hindsight, because we've now nearly 2 decades down the line. And the other is having been back and forth between your teaching in the USA and here, you also have the benefit of a certain distance that you can get a little objective about these things. So what do you see as the future of the Kala Ghoda Association? Where do you see this area going, and how do you see really in the context of urban conservation as well as Bombay's new growth trajectory?
So I would say, picking up on, again, Manik's Elphinstone College, that I should say the future of the association is rosy, but I should describe his past as murky, not rosy. So I'll correct that and pick up from there. You know, I know that's a wonderful question, and thanks for asking it, because one has been thinking a lot about it and talking to Manik and Brinda and trying to reflect. And I think part of the effort of writing in the book was really, I know, and I think as both Brinda and Manik have outlined so well, I mean, now it's, you know, it's like this big cottage industry that's now shuddering with excitement in a way of the possibilities. And so, you know, just to frame it more broadly in terms of distance and coming close to it. So I'll first just start with saying what I think, if I had to personally speculate or define aspirations, knowing everyone, so not to extend it unrealistically. And then I'll sort of talk about a few small things that seem so evident that one could do. So, I mean, I think going back to the notion of cultural infrastructure, this is an amazing demonstration of that, nestled within the idea of urban conservation, let's say. Conceptually, I think what is wonderful even about this, about Ajgankar, against all the odds, making places like this available for, you know, assets like this available, is in a city with our density, with a lack of resources, with all its problems, we cannot see infrastructure as only physical infrastructure. We have to look at cultural and social infrastructure, which is not just flyovers and bridges and roads, but we have to see the soft infrastructure, which is as important for life in the city, for the quality of life, for education, for children, etc. But we have to also see all forms of infrastructure, whether it's open space, as not monofunctional infrastructure. And what is successful here is the fact the garden can be used for reading. Sometimes it can be used for gatherings. Sometimes it can be used for children's events. I remember the entrance to the Sassoon used to be used for photography exhibitions, which because of the wood paneling, so it doesn't fight because you can't have art on it, but photography works well in frames, black and white, etc. So if we start imagining all the infrastructure we have in our city, in our country, not as being single-minded and monofunctional, it opens up huge possibilities. To give you just another example of this, which was, I think, finally the solution that we arrived at with Shireen, was the Oval Maidan, which was only for cricketers. I mean, what was the intervention in the Oval Maidan that made the locality connect to it? Which was Shireen's idea that, look, let's add a walking path along the edge so the citizens can walk there and feel for the Maidan, and it's not only cricketers coming from other parts of the city. So suddenly the intervention of a little walking track. So what was otherwise seen as a monofunctional open space, which was for cricket, suddenly became a place that citizens could walk in the evening, in the morning when the cricketers weren't there, which is what gave them incentive to band together to do it. So if this double coding, if this double dual meaning for all these pieces of infrastructure is something we can collectively as a community imagine, then we extend our assets in beautiful ways, but we also create new constituencies of people that not only through finance, but through their own sweat equity, get engaged in these places. So, you know, I think conceptually we have to make this shift. To extend from that, I think, you know, I mean, just the fact of, I went yesterday to Cross Maidan.
Can I intervene a minute? You know, you're saying these multiple purposes. This is exactly what we did in Horniman Circle.
That's correct.
So
that's the other example. Yeah, of course,
garden,
yeah.
Then we had entertainment, then we had literature, then we had book releases, and then we had we have a children's corner, we have a study corner, and all these event-based things, it was becoming what Shah Rukh had wanted it to become, a community center.
That's right. Yeah.
Was shut down by the municipality.
Correct. Yeah. No. So no. I think of course that's a problem. But this Horniman Circle is another example. But I mean, I think we have to be clearer in the narratives we construct to do this. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, I think we should be looking at all infrastructure in the whole city in this way, and not in this unidimensional way. So I mean, I think this is a whole shift in conversation that has to take place, because I think it would not, like I said, it would get new constituencies involved. It's a new way of imagining the urban, and not as pieces of singular infrastructure that go and actually disrupt things rather than do. So I was amazed yesterday at Cross Maidan. I must say I was moved by the scale of this, the fact there were art installations. And may I add that when I talk about this shift from monofunctional to multifunctional thing, it is then up to civil society to keep the integrity of those spaces intact. So for example, what you've done at Oval, that track is made in mud with Kadapa stone edgings. It's the minimal intervention, which means it doesn't spoil the integrity of the Maidan. What you do in Horniman Circle, it doesn't involve buildings. What happens at the Kala Ghoda is ephemeral. It disappears. You come back here on next Monday morning, you don't even know anything has happened. This is the genius of it. And that's where the big responsibility, which is, so the shift from monofunctional infrastructure doesn't mean we add more building and hard infrastructure, but we allow these ephemeral kinds of events to integrate in a soft way. So that's one. I just want to sort of just finish on this. So to just come after the Cross Maidan, one realized that how does one even create a network within the fort area? Because now I think the Kala Ghoda has the capacity to extend. And I think the next challenges for us, if I may just speculate, are 2 or 3-fold. One is that there are already many assets here that I think the Kala Ghoda Association, with what it's demonstrated with 17 editions of this and the scale that this has been taken in terms of curation, it has to draw the non-participating members in this area, which are specially government, into it. He mentioned Elphinstone College. That quad is one of the most beautiful spaces, which lies empty, nobody uses it. That would open up 20 different kinds of events that we could do, because it has also insulation from this mad traffic noise. You know, so there are assets like this that we can activate, which would add to the network and to the assets that we have here. So that's one. So that's at a micro scale, how we now begin to also insert this into different spaces. If you zoom out a little bit at the macro scale, I mean, look at the traffic noise. This is crazy. I see children crossing there with families in this dangerous traffic. It's ridiculous that the government is blind to this. This should be pedestrianized for the 10 days of the festival for sure. It would open up, and then you could, in the parking lot, not have to insulate it with stalls. You could do film screenings. You could do things which are free of the noise, which otherwise we have to... Correct. So the first festival did that, but it was a smaller affair. For one day you could do it. But if you do it for 10 days, we have to get into these bigger planning questions. And the government has to wake up to this, and we have to also maybe band together. And the third thing that I would say, and I'll end with this, is even in terms of programming, I mean, the effort and the tension, and we need a festival because the intensity of this in 10 days, it resonates nationally. So that, I'm not saying we should not do that. But we should now, I think, the assets in the association, the intellectual power in the association, the network that has been created, we should now get ambitious about programming through the year in some ways. And just as a start, that was one of the intentions of, with Kaiwan and Ranjit Hoskote, the exhibition we've done at the NGMA, which has got a great support from the Kala Ghoda Association. In fact, it came out with discussion with the Kala Ghoda. It's going to happen for 3 months, including the pavement galleries being used through March and April, which will be a good experiment in demonstrating how this programming, even in spurts, can extend periodically over the year as part under the umbrella of the association. So I think the combination of these 3 things, looking at macro planning issues, including pedestrianization, etc., trying to, again, bring and collaborate with the assets here which are not being used for various political reasons, including the museum much more in this. And the third is trying to program through the year, is I think what we are, I mean, I think we as a society are ready for. Now it's a matter of us trying to strategize to do this in the least painful ways.
Can I?
Yeah.
Rahul, a couple of things. Of course, I can't theorize as well as you do, but on a very practical level, what we have today, the traffic noise which you hear, is largely the indiscipline of motorists, but that's not really the subject of the discussion today. We have reached the level that we can over 9 days in our utilization. We can't, for example, say pedestrianize the whole place, cut off traffic, because this city has a north-south movement. So if you cut it off, we anyway have problems. We are today, we are using 25 traffic wardens of our own to try and sort of regulate traffic. So that is one part of it.
No, you go on. I just want to respond to it.
But the issue here is this, that you are absolutely right about a year-round usage of the area. And you may not be aware, but we've already had a study done by the UDRI on this. The government is very keen on doing it. If you remember a year or so ago, some minister made a statement on Times Square, and we're trying to do Times Square out here, which we all strongly oppose. But at the same time, I told the committee that why don't we look at the positive side of it? The other side of it is that for the first time, a government is coming forward and saying, we are willing to give you 10 crores of rupees. And then finally, I can't claim to travel much, but finally we just saw a presentation in the UDRI, and what we found was actually Times Square was completely pedestrianized. And how did they do that pedestrianization over what period of time? Once again, we have to keep in mind two things. One is that the existing business owners in the precinct. So we cannot really inconvenience them more than 9 days. So we have to keep that in mind. But we have a plan to at least take half the road surface, pedestrianize it after hours, and on Sundays again have the full thing. One thing which we are running afoul of are the silent zone regulations. So we have to do something about those silent zone regulations. And the silent zone regulations only because we have two religious places of worship. One is the synagogue and the other is the church.
And the Elphinstone College.
No, Elphinstone College doesn't fall into it because Elphinstone College is 100 meters away from our amphitheater. No. That is why we had the amphitheater. We could do programs in the amphitheater. We had to stop it once they introduced religious places.
But
okay.
Yeah. No, Manik, I mean, I think...
Last word to Rahul.
Okay,
I only just want to respond to that. And I mean, I'm not in disagreement, but I don't even think we should worry so much, even as an association. These ideas that I'm sort of putting forth, these are, I think, responsibilities of the whole city. And I think we should not expect even the association to worry about all these things. This is something that's at some point we have to build the critical mass in a conversation that happens as a wider conversation. So that, I think, is really
So that's
the
why,
issue.
Rahul, I'll begin with you. I'm just going to give you, because you're going to wrap up in this round and open the questions to the audience. So one line of a wish list. If you were, say, Chief Minister for a day or Municipal Commissioner for your day, what would your wish list for Kala Ghoda be? One, and then I'm just going to ask each one of you. Bizarre is great. The more bizarre, the greater.
I mean, for me, it's, I think, very clear. If this place can be pedestrianized even for 3 days in a week or on the weekends, right, throughout, which is absolutely possible. Don't forget when they pedestrianized or they cut off traffic from Green Drive to Flora Fountain when they're dismantling that bridge for a few months when they did the underpass and things. Everyone thought it was going to be a disaster. Everyone adjusted to it. I've looked at the plans for this. This road can be the easiest road to pedestrianize because of the big road you have along the Oval Maidan.
It would
change. Everything else I said would fall into place if you pedestrianize.
Brinda, yours. Can you just pass the mic around? Your wish list. If you were completely empowered, what would your wish list for Kala Ghoda be?
I think Manik and I would agree on the same thing, is that we get...
He might choose to disagree, so I'll ask him later.
Yeah, I mean, he's welcome to disagree, but I think we should have all the permissions that we want to do, all the... even if it's just...
Rahul has two
festival.
wishes, so it's going back to it.
I want to take my wish back. Actually, my wish would be...
And also a lot of money from the government,
Yeah.
and all kinds of support, every kind of support from the government, actually.
Actually, my wish would be to just make Manik Chief Minister for a day.
Okay, over to you, Shirin.
My wish list would be for open spaces to be regulated as open spaces for the benefit of the community instead of all sorts of nefarious people taking it away. I will not name any. And,
Please do. That'll make for more interesting reading tomorrow morning.
No, thank you. And, privatizing public spaces, that is not the intention at all. We have the need for green open spaces. Look at what is happening to all these cities which is dying under fog and smog, and what is Delhi like these days is just horrendous. So let us have our open spaces back to the community, and I think let them become, wherever the character lends itself, as community spaces where you have music, entertainment, drama, dance, whatever it is, for the benefit of the public. Why not?
Manik, yours. You get the last word.
I get the last word. Now, my wish list would be that this area be converted, like in most cities of the world, into a sort of showpiece round the year, where people of all persuasions, all backgrounds can use it for their enjoyment, without, of course, causing too much turmoil to an already. No, I know that you're laughing, but you know, Rahul, I know what I've gone through for 7 years. I know the sort of interests that we have battled. And finally, I must also say one thing, that for 9 days, if I had to be, put to this inconvenience, there are some very old people who are lawyers, who threatened to take us to court. And I must tell you this story because it's a very interesting story. So I went to meet him, and he was a former judge of the High Court. And he was very angry and said, I'm going to take you to court, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I pleaded with him. Then he said, okay, send me your balance sheet. I want to see your balance sheet. So I sent him the balance sheet. Then I went to meet him. And he said, I've looked at your balance sheet. And I must say that you don't spend much on, on the activities on the association. You're not spending much on the association. I'm very happy to know that. And then, I kept on talking, and then he smiled ruefully, and he said, I brought this topic up at home over the dinner table, and both my wife and daughter-in-law said that if you ever do anything to the festival, we will never talk to you again. And then again he sheepishly smiled, and he said, my granddaughter is participating in the festival.
So I would like now to open the floor to the audience, and if any of you have any questions to address to any of the panelists.
Hello everyone, my name is Pranav, and I'm an electronics engineer. Moments ago, Abha mentioned interests and fields, so my question is related to that. I was working in a company, an IT industry, and all of a sudden I left my job in December, and I started traveling. Traveled the whole tourist spots in India, met strangers, met friends with them, and I feel like right now I feel like I can do this till the rest of my life now. And no offense, guys, but you guys are old. But
Know that.
but on the bright side, you guys have so much of experience. So I feel like you could, point me in the right direction and give me some advice to guys like me who did this, recently who did this. So I would love your advice on my situation right now.
No, I think we'll do that over coffee post this session, but Manek's got some advice for you.
All right.
This whole thing, it's only as old as you feel. But the fact of the matter is this, that I would, and Brinda will bear me out, that the festival is finally run by a lot of young people like you who volunteer, who come forward, and who do a lot of things. So I think what you should do is that you should meet us and you should give us your name, and we'll keep you in mind for the next edition. We'll tell you what time, so then after you finish some more traveling, you come back to Mumbai and you work for the next edition. We need electronics engineers. And I'll even recommend you to our friend Tanush, who does all our sound and everything out here. So you could be of some help there. And yes, you're right, we're getting old. We've got to hand it over.
Okay, question for the gentleman in blue.
I'm Dr. B.S. Pandit from Kurla East, Nehru Nagar. I am 75 today. Some 10-12 years ago, I had brought my children and grandchildren to this festival on 2 occasions. In between, during the last 5-6 years, I was operated for both the knees and I had a fall, was operated for this. What I'm trying to tell you is that in spite of being aged 75, in spite of having undergone 2-3 major operations during the last 5 years, I had visited last year one day, and this year again I was waiting for this week, and on the second day, I am very happy that I am seeing you all people who are behind this festival. This festival is amazing. We do visit art galleries, but hardly ever we can see such massive art pieces on the Rampart Road. This is simply amazing. And more amazing is the crowds. The crowds today were so heavy when I reached at Landgate by bus from VT at 6 o'clock. The crowds were so heavy, they were so much enjoying, they were taking selfies and everything. But having a stick in my hand, I was afraid that I might be pushed. So I decided I'll come during the daytime sometime again. And I just came down the Rampart Row. And then this David Sassoon Library, I was an annual member for 10 years. This is like my home. This garden is my home. The garden has changed so beautifully. I can't even imagine about this. And all this because of your association.
No,
And so I have stood only to thank you on behalf of the entire Bombay city, including probably suburbs, as distant as Kalyan, because
Thank you, sir. I think feedback like this makes it all worthwhile.
Thank you.
Dr. Pandit and Brinda and I, we share this, and I speak for both of us, that when we go through all the problems to put together the festival, it is only when people like you come here and enjoy, that is what makes all our problems worth it. So you are welcome. Please come every year to the festival, and we hope to see you for many, many more years. And we hope that you will, the same way that you've come today, navigating through those crowds, and I'm sure those crowds respected you and respected your age. I'm sure they will continue to do that. Another thing I must say, Rahul, and this is something I've even asked the police, we've had absolutely no, and you know, I may be tempting fate, but we have had absolutely no issues of, you know, molestation, of bad behavior. We've had real celebrities walking through the festival and they have not been mobbed, they have not been. So I guess that says something for the spirit of the city and for people who come and visit it. And Dr. Pandit, you've really made it worth, you know, all the 17 years of labor, you've really made it worth it. Thank you so very much.
I think with that, we'll just take one last question. So there's one hand up right at the back.
Thank you. I was hoping I could ask a question and not give a comment. But I was wondering, on one side of the spectrum, there's Kala Ghoda, which is a free festival for everyone to come, participate, volunteer. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are these festivals that are mushrooming, funded by real estate companies. So I was very curious to know your perspective on this neoliberal turn that community festivals are taking, and the role that Kala Ghoda can play in how these festivals and the way they are designed and evolve, you know, the role that you can play. And it'd be great if all of you can answer with, you know, your hats of an academic, a creative person, a conservationist, a lawyer, and also a publisher. So thank you.
Okay, I'll start since I have the mic and then I'll pass it around. You know, to me, I think a lot of constructs of festivals, eventually they become mass festivals, but initially they are constructs. So what we have in Bombay and Mumbai, the Great Ganpati Festival, was something that was consciously begun by Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and today that's where it is. So to my mind, that isn't sort of an ephemeral thing where the Ganpati comes and he's there for everyone in the pandals, and then he goes back into the sea, and all the physical constructs in those buildings just disappear and the city's back to a normal functioning life. We have the Navratri that follows, and we have pandals everywhere, and the same thing happens. And this is really like, now Kala Ghoda Festival is a Navratri, you know, you've extended it 7+2, but in a sense, this too, we are 17 years down the line, and I'm imagining that it's going to carry on for another few decades, if not more. So this really, Kala Ghoda festival has become part of the city's psyche. And I think that is why it's so important that we consciously stay away from some sort of a commercial branding and a kind of and that's why I think there's been a conscious decision that whenever it's been partnered with, it's done with sort of media groups and not sort of other real estate agents or, with people with agendas. So I think that's my point of view, but I'll pass this around. Why don't we let everyone respond?
I don't think you mean religious festivals. I think you're just talking about the festivals like Kala Ghoda, isn't it? So actually, I think Kala Ghoda has been a forerunner. There are many, many festivals that have just, they've sprouted. Recently, we have the Ballad Estate Festival, which, as we speak, is probably going on right now. And I don't know how well it's doing on, but it's a new festival. But we also have Celebrate Bandra, and there are a few others. Apparently, I heard that the Chief Minister came from the Chembur Festival, which was sponsored by the Times of India, and of course ours is sponsored by Hindustan Times. One of the things that Manik, we forgot to thank people are the Hindustan Times for our festival. No, I know, but we were thanking people here, so I think.
Look, also let us admit one thing, that these festivals are, while admission to people is free, festivals cost money. Our security bill is as high as 20 lakhs of rupees. Just to give you one example. Our expenses on infrastructure also are huge. So some amount of sponsorship has to be there. Otherwise, you cannot provide this experience. But what has been our constant endeavor is to protect the brand. And the brand that is the Kala Ghoda Association and the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival. It is, in a sense, cooperative because the artists who perform here either perform without charging us anything or at not their market rates, less than half their market rate. So in that way, it is very cooperative. But there is some amount of funds you require. And Brinda will bear me out. We have this constant thing with our sponsors of how we reduce their exposure to see that that is not overpowering at all. That sort of merges with what we have. So the balance to strike is very important. And I think another important part here is this, that the Kala Ghoda Association is a complete not-for-profit organization. So we don't have to do anything for profit, as long as we can break even. But fortunately now, not only are we breaking even, but due to the generosity of Hindustan Times, Brinda said I haven't acknowledged them, so I'm acknowledging it, that due to the generosity of Hindustan Times, we have a surplus, which we are now using for what is our primary purpose, and that is of looking after the various architecture and heritage buildings that we have in this vicinity. So I hope that answers your question, and even going forward, I can assure you that we are not going to commercialize the brand. I personally take great care to see that the Kala Ghoda Association by itself is there everywhere, so that the festival is eponymous. It is the Kala Ghoda festival, but we even ensure that the association gets its bit. But money is a fact of life. You require it. There's nothing wrong with that.
I would extend what Manik is saying, but frame it slightly differently, because you use the word neoliberal, and so how do you contextualize it in that kind of condition? And I think Manik, he used a couple of operative words which I want to kind of interpret and extend. I mean, I'm actually in total agreement with what he's saying. I just want to reinforce it. He said strike a balance. So I think that is the critical motif, so to speak, that you could use. So let's rewind back to 95, the heritage regulations has urban conservation. 92 is we liberalize our economy. And the decade of the 90s, for all of us who were working then, was a terrible decade where, in some ways, the government was absolving itself any responsibility to engage with the public realm in a way. And private sector hadn't yet confidently stepped in because it was yet setting its agenda. And, private sector is only in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, begin to, through corporate social responsibility, etc., find mechanisms where they have recognized the inequities are so big, whether it's the built environment or, other things. So in the context of the neoliberalism you're talking about, I think the role the Kala Ghoda played, what Shireen organized at the Oval played, it was citizens taking these questions and issues in their hands and they're making it responsible. So therefore the agendas were very clear. And that's the reason why I keep harping back on the agendas, and the introduction to this book, Manik has very beautifully articulated what the missions of the Kala Ghoda are, and foremost he's listed to physically improve the infrastructure, etc., and animate it as a piece of cultural infrastructure. So the reason I picked up on strike a balance is the reason I'm kind of prodding us all collectively and and I'm doing it in the spirit of a constructive spirit, is now that as the festival has grown and its capacity has grown, maybe we should calibrate our ambitions of what those physical improvements can be and how far they can go out, And I think this is really the balance, because the role the Kala Ghoda and such festivals will play, I hope, is kind of this supplementary role of trying to claim public space, to improve it, to bring other imaginations for quality of life, which the government is incapable of doing with the lack of complete capacity or the lack of completely different agendas. So, lack of imagination. But then it also is contingent on professionals like all of us to build those imaginations. So I think civil society has to, bond together for that. Now, in the context of the other festivals, I think this is where one has to be critical and look at it, because some of those they have other agendas which have to do with furthering the public sector when the real estate comes in, and they have completely different intentions. And I think this is where the media has to become more critical in evaluating what the roles of these are. But I think luckily, and I believe it firmly, that the Kala Ghoda, I think everyone involved keeps reminding themselves about the core agenda, which is what makes it so robust.
Okay, I think we're out of time, but I would just say, starting from, the book is available right at the counter here, but our first question was from this gentleman who thought that we were all too old. But believe me, we're all looking forward to the next 2 decades of the Kala Ghoda festival, some of us, I hope, are around for that 20th, and we'll hope to see you back then. Thank you.